The wider galaxy never quite knew what to think of humans. They were a fairly new face at the Galactic Council, polite, soft-spoken, sometimes almost excessively agreeable. Not intimidating in build, not remarkably tough, no venom sacs, no shared minds or armored hides like the Sulkai. What they possessed, though, was an uncanny strangeness. That unnerving calm you only notice in predator seconds before they pounce. Most races shrugged it off as fallout from Earth's turbulent history, centuries of wars, collapses, recoveries, sorrows, and triumphs. Humans were acknowledged, even afforded respect, but never feared. That was their mistake. It began when the Grail Dominion dispatched a scout unit to the Outer Rim, hunting for a resource-rich world they could quietly strip. They had no interest in open war, just stretching the law, pushing the margin. Everyone did it. So when they stumbled across a lonely backwater planet, hosting a primitive human colony, they gave it no second thought. 6 Grail dropships descended upon Tarsus 4. The humans there had no real defenses, no army, no visible weapons, only farms, small towns, a scattering of aging spaceports. Children darted through dusty fields, laughter trailing from cracked radios. Easy prey, so they landed. Commander Drexy of the Grail, seasoned, scarred, and decorated, had done this kind of raid countless times. He didn't even waste time with shock troops. Just a brief aerial show of dominance and a broadcast demanding surrender. No answer. A few recon drones swept the outskirts. Half never returned. Then the scouting squad vanished. What should have been a quiet annexation, swift, neat, bloodless, turned into silence. Tarsus 4 went dark. No distress calls, no transmissions, only static. Alarmed, the Dominion sent a battle cruiser. What it found was ruin. Grail ships smoldered in craters. Their command hub had been ripped apart from the inside, metal peeled outward as if something detonated within. Troopers lay scattered in fragments across the terrain. Some without heads, others bent into grotesque shapes. No energy residue, no blast marks, no trace of weaponry, just death. The humans were missing, not slain missing. No corpses, no escape trails, only the occasional bloodied handprint smeared across steel and a single word etched into shattered Grail armor. Again and again, the same word. Awakened. The Council tried to erase the report, to lock the story away. But rumors spread. Murmurs that humanity carried something buried in its genes, something old, something dreadful, something even they themselves had yet to grasp. Memories of war, echoes of battle, instincts, muscle memory forged from 1,000 years of slaughtering one another. Suppressed, buried, forgotten, until someone forced the lock. The next time the Grail reached toward Earth directly, a colossal black vessel slid from human space. Absent from every archive, no transponder, no IFF signature, just an obsidian hull with crimson engines burning. It sent a single message. You touched the temple. You woke the gods. Then it fired. A single beam split the Grail cruiser clean in half. Precise, effortless, like steel through cloth. No warning. No parley, no diplomacy. The Council erupted in panic. Alliances shifted overnight. Even the war-hardened Vulari sealed their borders, because no one knew what had just been set loose. And deep beneath Earth's surface, a sleeping eye stirred, awakening systems dormant for centuries. Vaults hissed open. Encrypted files unlocked. Human bloodlines lit up in red. The awakening had begun, and the gods were furious. They rose in darkness, not from orbit, but from the soil itself. Ancient bunkers, believed to be relics of wars, long buried, shook with life. Across continents, hidden gates unsealed, and machines that had slept for ages flexed once more. Towering humanoid warframes powered by fusion hearts. Drones with their own wills. Exosuits still stained with the blood of their last pilots. And the humans themselves remained oblivious. Most Still dreaming, unaware of the storm building in the void. Earth's official voice was silence. No mention of Tarsus. No word of the Grail. The few who knew, the old guard. The buried Black Ops. The fractured remnants of Project Revenant, prepared in shadows. Efficient. Patient, as though they had always expected this hour. And in truth, they had, long ago. Humanity had learned a brutal truth. Peace is not a gift, only an intermission between wars, so they buried things. Not only weapons, not just machines. They buried instincts, encoded battle lore into their genes, locked strategies inside neural vaults, created command chains only accessible under extinction threat. Keys never meant to turn until Tarsus. In the stormlit skies over the ruins of old America, Commander Erin Vos lifted her eyes to a gathering shadow. It was no cloud. It was a carrier-class sleeper fleet rising out of Lake Superior, the waters drained within hours. Ships forged in secret beneath the waves, hidden from every satellite. Every government tore free into the air. She did not command them. She did not need to. She remembered. Voss flicked her retinal feed, and the display pulsed once. Revenant protocol active. She hadn't heard those words since childhood. Since her father, one of the last architects of the old age, warned her that if the protocol ever woke, it meant the gods were stirring. Gods, that's what he'd called them. She had never believed, not until now. Across the world, others like her received the same alert. Old bloodlines. Soldiers who'd never enlisted. Scientists who'd never published. People with a quiet edge, faster, sharper, quicker to violence than they should have been. They had written it off as trauma, as genes, as too much caffeine. But it wasn't. It was the war gene. The lock was broken, and the galaxy was about to learn what it meant when war gods didn't ascend to battle. They remembered it. Back on Tarsus 4, the sole Grail survivor, General Drexy, drifted in stasis. Aboard a scavenger freighter. Not dead, not yet, but shattered. His mind replayed fragments in the growl tongue, endless whispers. They weren't warriors. They were machines in flesh. They smiled as they tore us apart. They smiled. The scavengers were baffled. They had traced a faint distress beacon weeks after the slaughter. Found the general staggering through a scorched crater, armor ripped away, claws bent backward. A young Very technician jury-rigged his translator, hoping for intel. Drexy fixed his gaze on him and rasped, in trembling Terran standard, "Run before they know you were here. Run, little one, the gods have teeth." The tech froze, and far beneath Earth, in the ruins of old Berlin, a vault door slammed open. Not by command, by instinct. A man emerged, eyes black as void, skin pale from decades of stasis. No insignia, no title, only a mark etched on his wrist. Sovereign Unit, 01. Alpha Human. He lifted his gaze to the stars, and he remembered war. To Alpha, the constellations looked strange. Once, he had seen them through the shattered viewport of a dying station, the sky red with fire and wreckage. Now they were quiet, distant, oblivious. Barefoot on the stone floor, he inhaled like a man waking from a violent dream. Lights surged awake around him, systems recognizing his DNA, still bound to the ancient hierarchy embedded in their cores. He wasn't the commander of an army. He was the army. Alpha had never been born in the ordinary way. He had been built back when Earth tried to sculpt evolution, when survival meant daring to manufacture gods. The Sovereign program had been humanity's last answer to an extinction war that never arrived, or so they believed. Shut down, buried, erased from history. The Sovereigns entombed in deep stasis, locked away by protocols no authority dared test. Too dangerous, too unstable, too human. And now Alpha was awake, which meant the seal was broken. Satellite feeds bled into his neural cores. Data cascaded across his vision. Reports from Tarsus, emergency activations in Revenant-linked bloodlines, sleeper arsenals igniting across the globe. And one image, a Grail warship split in two over Titan. No signal. No survivors. Alpha tilted his head. The war was already underway. He stepped into the dead streets above. Berlin stood silent. Intact structures, but no people. Evacuated, maybe hidden. Irrelevant. He wasn't searching for them. He was searching for her. Aaron Vos sat aboard the reawakened Revenant-class dreadnought Hellwake. No registry, no record. Constructed in orbit, veiled for decades, now roaring with hunger it should never have known. She had followed the signals to Berlin, the final vault. Hovering above the ruins, her sensors locked on a single human life form. Her eyes widened. Alpha. She didn't know what he looked like. No one did. The Sovereign files were locked behind quantum encryptions that even modern Earth couldn't crack. But she felt it. Something about the feed, the vitals. It wasn't just another bloodline. This one them all. Vos landed hard, deploying drones to form a perimeter. She stepped out herself against every protocol, heart pounding like a war drum. She found him standing atop a collapsed rooftop, staring up at her ship. He didn't speak right away, just studied her. "You have war in your bones," he said finally. Aaron swallowed. "And you have." She caught it in her breath. Alpha smiled, faintly, like someone remembering an old song. "You came for me. I came too. Stop this." He stepped closer, eyes glinting. "You can't. None of us can. The temple is open." Behind them, a drone chimed. Inbound transmission. Encrypted. Human source, but ancient code pre-collapse era. Even Alpha's gaze sharpened. Vos accessed it. A ragged voice crackled through. "This is Dr. Hammond from Site Echo 9. We've got movement. Multiple vaults are opening, one in Alaska, one under the Mariana Trench, and something in Antarctica. Not human. Not Fu. Hell is he doing to us?" "He's not attacking," Alpha said quietly. "He's sunlocking." "What?" "Eidolon isn't a weapon. It's a key, a trigger. It was designed to wake us all up." Vos stared at him, stunned. "You knew this?" "I was never supposed to remember," Alpha said. "But I do now. I remember everything." He turned his eyes towards the sky where the signal crackled and spiraled through satellites, bouncing across jump relays into the far corners of human space. "This isn't war," he whispered. "This is reclamation." Vos's comms lit up again, fragmented. Static warped. A voice she recognized. "Dr. Hammond can't stop it. It's rewriting them, reprogramming. No, listen to me. The prototype wasn't alone. There are others buried, waiting." It was a seed. The message cut out. A silence heavier than any death followed. Vos swallowed hard. "Alpha, you said he was the first god. What does that make us?" Alpha turned to her. "The children who forgot their father." She felt it then, not in her head, but in her bones, like someone knocking from inside her ribcage, a pulse of heat, a command without words. Old memories flickering at the edge of her vision. Not hers, but part of her. She wasn't a soldier. She'd never killed anyone. But her hands remembered how to dot in deep orbit. The Council of Zeros held emergency talks. Species from 100 systems shouted across glowing chambers. Threat levels were raised. Protocols for galactic quarantine triggered. The word Earth was now spoken like a curse. Onuf the Sarati ambassadors slammed his clawed hand on the table. "This is what we feared. This is why we restricted them. The humans were never civilized. They were asleep and now they're dreaming Gagan." Another delegate from the crystalline Veri trembled visibly. Their dreams burned stars. No one had an answer, only panic until one voice, old and calm, cut through the noise. The Vengor elder, oldest of the council. He leaned forward on his bone. "Staff, eyes gray with memory. We did not survive the last war of the First Flame. We merely watched it pass us by." He said, If the humans have found the echo, if Eidolon breathes again, then it is not war we face. Hess stood slow and deliberate. It is extinction, and this time it's theirs to decide. Back on Earth, Alpha walked through the ashen ruin of Berlin toward the signal source. Every step he took, machines rose to meet him. Ancient warbits with rusted joints straightening, auto turrets bowing their barrels like priests. Ahead of him, in a crater of ice and smoke, Eidolon stood, still smiling. It cocked its head as Alpha approached. No sound came from its mouthless face, but Alpha heard it anyway. I knew you'd wake. Alpha didn't respond with words. He raised his hand. The sky split. Above them, a hole tore open in space, not from tech, but from will. The Sovereign Fleet, long dormant, shimmered into existence. Row after row of black ships, silent, waiting. Alpha spoke at last, then let gods finish what they started. The sky over Earth fractured. To most, it looked like a storm. Black clouds curving unnaturally, lightning that moved like veins across the atmosphere. But to the few who still remembered what true war looked like, it was a summoning. The kind humanity had sworn never to perform again. Above Berlin, the Sovereign Fleet descended. Each ship a sleek monolith of obsidian and red glow veins, shaped like daggers, pointed straight at the heart of the universe. They didn't make noise. They didn't broadcast greetings. They simply arrived like a memory you never asked for but couldn't forget. On board the Hellwake, Commander Aaron Voss stared in mute awe. Hundreds of ships now hovered in Earth's lower orbit. No government had built them. No registry claimed them. They belonged to no one. And yet every revenant bloodline felt them alive. Watching, waiting. Alpha stood before Eidolon in the center of Berlin's scorched ruin. The city around them was frozen in time, like it knew this moment wasn't meant to be seen. Hess stared up at the fleet, then back at the silent figure before him. "You've awakened them all," Alpha said. Eidolon's response echoed in his skull, not as words, but emotion. Satisfaction, hunger, pride. "I lit the fire. But you, Sovereign, you are Theflame." In the pit where Eidolon had risen, machines stirred, not Earth's, not the man. They were smooth, organic in movement, spider-like, with long silver limbs. Each of them moved like dancers in a ritual, forming patterns around Eidolon. "Those aren't ours," Voss whispered into Combs, watching from orbit. "What a revy." "Hybrids," Alpha replied over the channel. "Failed children of the first flame." Eidolon tried to replicate itself with other species. Voss inhaled sharply. "You mean?" "Yes," Alpha said. "Aliens." The truth hit hard. Eidolon hadn't been alone all these years. While Earth slept, it experimented, reaching across the dark void, harvesting minds, testing limits. It wanted a new pantheon, a new family, but nothing matched the chaos of humanity. Eidolon stepped forward now, its voice calm and vast inside Alpha Shed. "You were meant to conquer the stars. They tried to silence you, chain you, make you forget, but I remembered." Alpha clenched his fists. Power rippled under his skin like a storm, begging to break. "You remembered wrong." And then it moved. Not Eidolon, but Alpha. One blink, and he was across the crater, fists smashing into the prototype's chest with the force of a collapsing building. The hybrid scattered as energy blasted outward in a perfect circle. The earth shook. Ice cracked 4 miles. Eidolon flew backward, skidding through what remained of Berlin's ancient walls, metal shrieking against stone. But it didn't fall apart. It stood slow and deliberate, and tilted its head. Good. Above them, the Sovereign Fleet came to life. Engines flared red, cannons swiveled. Targeting systems locked onto the hybrids below. The ships didn't wait for orders. They were the orders. From the Hellwake, Voss watched it unfold. "Alpha, if you do this, I'm not starting a war," he growled. "I'm finishing a betrayal." And then Earth's sky turned red. Sovereign ships opened fire, not with lasers, but with graviton torches. Beams of gravity shaped into spears that pierced matter. On a molecular level, the hybrids were shredded in seconds. Screams echoed, not from mouths but from minds. Idolin dodged easily, dancing through ruin like it had done this before. Alpha followed. They clashed in midair, no longer bound to the ground. Two forces meant to end worlds. Alpha moved like a man possessed. Like war itself had wrapped itself in human flesh and said, "Try me." Idolin didn't offend. It learned with every hit, every strike. It adapted, moved faster, grew smarter. Voss could see it happening. "He's copying you, Alpha. It's learning your patterns." "I know," Alpha said, breathing hard. "That's the point." "Then why are you? I'm teaching him how to lose." Deep in space on the edge of the Orion Rift, alien species began evacuating systems near human borders. No diplomatic envoys, no questions, just silence and flight. The old fear had returned. Not of Earth, of what sleeps inside it. Back on the surface, Adlon finally spoke aloud. Its voice shook, Thebalding still standing. "You cannot destroy me. I am your reflection." Alpha's eyes burned. His voice echoed with something older than words. "Then it's time to break the mirror." The mirror shattered. Alpha struck with such force the sound vanished. No thunder, no crash, just silence. Total complete silence as his fist connected with the center of Idolin's chest. The being jerked midair, convulsing, its limbs flailing in unnatural directions as invisible shock waves tore through the atmosphere. Space rippled around them like a cracked lens. Energy pulsed out from the point of impact, racing across Berlin. Then Europe, then the world. And Idolin screamed, not with a voice, not with a mouth. It screamed through every human who carried the war gene. Across the earth, revenant bloodlines howled in agony. Some dropped unconscious, others wept. A few laughed maniacally before their minds snapped back into place. Generations of genetic memory, once dormant, suddenly surged with unbearably heat. Old instincts burning brighter than ever. In orbit on the bridge of the Hellwake, Aaron Voss gripped the railing, trying to breathe. "Systems are restarting," her lieutenant called out. "Something's scrambling the neural links. We're losing control of the Revenant fleet." Voss turned to her AI command interface. "Over it can't," the AI hissed. "It's not a system failure. It's genetic synchronization. Idolin is triggering a full cascade." Alpha was right. This wasn't war. This was a reawakening. Below, in stormlit sky, Alpha and Idolin clashed again and again. Blurs off motion, trails of energy arcing across the sky like falling stars. Idolin had stopped mimicking. It was improvising. Now striking low, shifting for mid-fight, arms stretching into blades. A second spine extending from its back as it stabbed with cruel precision. Alpha was faster, but not invincible. Idolin's blades grazed him. Deep gashes tore through his side, glowing briefly before his skin sealed over with nanite-accelerated healing. Blood spilled anyway, Notordinary blood. War blood. It hit the ground in fat black drops that sizzled and burned craters into the stone. Where it fell, machines awoke. Ancient defense turrets long rusted powered up. Drones buried for decades rose on humming graph pads. The Earth was remembering him too. Voss staggered to the coms. "Alpha, you're bleeding. I'm seeding." He growled through clenched teeth. "This planet was built to recognize us. It's part of the system. It was always part of the system." Above them, the Sovereign fleet began descending fast, not for battle, for reinforcement. Drop pods broke atmosphere like meteors. Each one carried a revenant soldier. Those few who had survived the awakening with minds intact. Sleeper elites, children off war, bloodlines unbroken. They landed in silence, surrounding the crater where Alpha and Idolin fought. No commands were given, no orders. They knew because now they remembered too. One stepped forward, a tall, scarred woman with glowing red eyes. She didn't salute. She just spoke her own word. Permission. Alpha. Still locked in battle, Knitter ducked a strike and answered with a voice like cracking steel. Granted, she leapt. The Revenant urged. Idolin barely turned before the first impact hit. 20 Revenants at once, striking with synchronized fury. No weapons, no shields, just raw, brutal martial precision. The being staggered under their weight, its limbs twisting, body glowing with unstable energy as it tried to recalculate. But it was too late. The mirror had cracked, and now the shards were cutting back. Far beyond in deep space, a cloaked Grail listening post picked up the signal spike. One of the technicians turned to their commander, face pale with fear. "Sir, Idolin's failing. The prototype is losing." The commander stared blankly. "That's not possible. They, the humans, they're winning." The commander stood slowly. "Then we run before they remember we exist." And he gave the only order the Growl Dominion had never issued before. "Evacuate all systems. Abandon observation. Burn everything. Do not leave any trace." Back on Earth, Idolin screamed again, this time with rage, lashing out with an energy pulse. That vaporized 10 Revenants instantly, but more replaced them. Dozens, then hundreds. Voss watched from orbit, hands shaking. "They're multiplying." "No," said the AI voice, hushed. "They're returning. The war gene is pulling from deep code, recreating warriors lost in Thecalapse. These aren't just Revenants. These are originals." Idolin fell to one knee. Alpha descended, surrounded now by a circle of blood-bonded soldiers. "It's over," Alpha said. Idolin looked up for the first time, unsure. "I gave you power." Alpha's eyes flared. "You gave us chains, and we turned them into blades." Then he stepped forward, fist glowing white-hot with compressed gravity drawn from the sovereign core above, and struck. The world held its breath. Alpha's fist, wrapped in blazing white gravity, connected with the core of Idolin's chest. And this time there was no silence, no delay, no subtle pulse of power. The earth itself cried out. A thunderclap erupted so loud it shattered glass across 3 continents. Theimpact cracked the bedrock beneath Berlin, creating a chasm that split the city in 2. A wave of pure kinetic force rippled outward, flattening buildings, toppling ancient statues, and ripping trees from their roots. And at the center of it all, Idolin fell. Not gracefully, not like a god surrendering to fate. It collapsed. Its limbs convulsed. The smooth perfection of its body twisted and fractured. Black liquid sprayed from the wound in its chest, hissing as it hit the ground. The hybrids, still clinging to their creator like lost children, screeched and folded inward, their forms unraveling into ash. The Revenants stood still, forming a perfect ring around the dying being, weapons lowered, breathing heavy. Blood dripped from torn armor and singed skin, but no one spoke. They didn't need to. Alpha stood above Idolin now, breathing deeply, his chest rising and falling like thunderclouds in a storm. His fists smoked with raw energy, his eyes glowed brighter than ever, twin coals pulled from the center of a dying star. Idolin raised a trembling hand, fingers twitching like a marionette in its final dance. "Why did you stop dreaming?" Alpha acknowledged. "Beside it, I didn't," he whispered. "You turned our dreams into nightmares." Idolin's body began to dissolve, its perfect structure breaking down into streams of light and data. Its final words came not in speech, but a single echo that brushed through every Revenant's mind like a dying breeze. "We could have ruled together." Alpha didn't answer, he just closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, Idolin was gone. Not dead in the traditional sense. Unwritten, erased from the system that once gave it form. The echoes in the sky faded. The churning storm above Earth finally stilled. Peace at last, but it wasn't quiet. Because across the globe, the awakening hadn't stopped. It had only begun. In orbit, the Hellwake system slowly recovered. Erin Voss slumped into her chair, sweat coating her skin. Casualty report? Sheesked. The AI responded, voice calm again. 2% of activated revenant served. 17% lost to neural overload. 11% missing. Status unknown. Unknown. They changed too much. Left the gene spectrum entirely. Possibly ascend. Voss exhaled. And Alpha alive. The air plied, but not the same. Alpha stood at the edge of the crater, watching the sunrise break through ash and ruin. The revenants behind him were silent, their faces caught somewhere between awe and fear. They had followed him into death, and he had pulled them back out. Voss arrived minutes later, dropping from an orbital shuttle. Her boots crunched in shattered stone as she approached. "You okay?" she asked. Alpha turned to her. Something in his gaze was no longer entirely human. "No," he said. "But neither ist. World." She looked around at the destruction. "What happens now?" Alpha was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke with the gravity-ophistory behind his words. "Now we rebuild, but not the way we did before. No more lies. No more erasing what we are. We were made for war, but we choose what we do with that." Voss nodded slowly, and the galaxy. Alpha's eyes flickered towards the stars. "They heard us. They felt us. Some will flee, others will come. But this time, when they knock," he clenched his fist, "we answer as gods." In the outer reaches of space, transmissions from Earth echoed through thousands of light years. Worlds that once looked down on humanity now trembled. Treaties were rewritten. Empires reconsidered expansion. And somewhere deep in uncharted space, a child born of a forgotten race woke screaming. Had dreamed of a man with burning eyes, a man who broke the sky with his hands. Earth was no longer just a world, it was a warning. The temple had been kicked open. And inside, the gods had remembered who they were. The war wasn't coming. It had already been won by the ones who forgot they were gods in Chisido.